Hollywood has produced an abundance of captivating film and television series centered on law enforcement, spanning many different genres. As a lifelong enthusiast, my passion for these stories started in my childhood with my first viewing of 21 Jump Street. Though the premise, a team of youthful-looking cops infiltrating high schools and colleges to dismantle drug rings, gangs, or other criminal enterprises, may have been a little bit far-fetched, I found it utterly entertaining. Even now, I'm compelled to give any police-themed movie or television show a chance. Among the many stellar portrayals of officers in film, there is one hidden gem that I recently rediscovered, and that is Fort Apache, the Bronx. Probably its obscurity is the reason why it's eluded me for years. I vaguely recall my father owning a worn-out VHS copy of this that looked so saturated that I dismissed it like from a film from the 1950s, unworthy of my attention. It wasn't until later in life that I stumbled upon it again, finally giving it the viewing it deserved. Fort Apache, the Bronx is a 1981 film directed by Daniel Petrie and stars Paul Newman, Ed Asner, and Kent Wall, and is set in the gritty, crime-ridden South Bronx, New York. The film follows Murphy, a veteran cop navigating through life at the 41st Precinct, nicknamed Fort Apache due to its war zone-like environment. Amidst rampant corruption, violence, and despair, Murphy tries to maintain his moral compass while dealing with a new captain, a rookie partner, and a complex new relationship with a nurse. Now, if you haven't seen Fort Apache the Bronx, that's okay because it's pretty hard to find. I think you can only get the DVD online somewhere, but it's not available on any streaming site. But if you do want to check the movie out before watching my video, I suggest you stop because there are spoilers up ahead. The film opens with a disclaimer. This is because people in the Bronx were upset that the movie was accurately depicting the Bronx at the time. The disclaimer has to explain that the movie is about officers in the precinct and not about the people in the community trying to make it better. For the record, they are still trying to make it better. Then we see a parked patrol car. Two officers are inside, just starting off their shift when a prostitute named Charlotte, played by Pam Grier, approaches them. She's basically asking them if they're interested to try the merchandise, and they both laugh and say that they're on the job. She responds with, "Shit, I'm on my job too." Then she goes into her purse to show them something and pulls out a revolver and Booyah! She takes them out. Then she leaves the scene of the crime. Some local passerbys hears the shots, and as we think they're probably gonna go try to help the officers or investigate or see where the girl went, no, instead they decide to go and ransack the car, stealing the officers' weapons and even taking the radio dispatch that's on the dashboard. We then move over to the 41st Precinct in the Bronx, where we meet our lead, Murphy, played by Paul Newman. He sits reading the paper in the locker room while fellow officers discuss the double homicide of the two officers earlier. It appears they came from this precinct and they were both rookies that should have not been in the RMP together. We hear the officers start to discuss what happened to the two rookies. Murphy jumps in and changes the subject. He senses that discussing the deaths of these two rookies is going to bring down morale. He brings his partner's appearance to the other officers' attention. He starts to break his partner Corelli's balls about being a pretty boy and always being dressed nice when he isn't in his uniform. Corelli says that Murphy's just upset because he's still a beat cop, and Corelli has aspirations for more in life. He is dressing for success and doesn't plan on being a patrolman forever. We then see some of the sergeants at the front desk of the precinct and discover that the current captain is going to retire today, and a new Take No BS captain is coming to take over. After hearing the rest of the roll call, we follow our two lead characters and see what a typical day is like for them in the Bronx. They first have to deal with the drag queen ready to jump off the roof of his building. Hey, that's Cupcakes from Short Eyes. Damn, I guess they did get to his booty hole after all. They attempt to calm him down, but he decides to take flight. Lucky for us, he turned into a mannequin, and Murphy and Corelli were easily able to catch him and pull him back up. They then take him to a local hospital and tell the doctors just to give him something to calm him down and send him over to Bellevue Hospital. That's a hospital in the city that has a psychiatric ward. They don't intend on filing any charges. This is also where Murphy gets to look at this new beautiful Spanish nurse named Isabella. When she hears Murphy tell Cupcakes that she isn't going to arrest him, she looks surprised. For her, it seems like he's not like every other police officer. Murphy tells Cupcakes he's going to be okay and that he'll be back to check in on him. Cupcakes thanks Murphy by name, so we know that they've had encounters with one another before. They then see a purse snatcher that they were told to be on the lookout for earlier during roll call, as he snatches a purse right in front of them. This leads to a chase that ends up with Murphy trying to chase down the purse snatcher on foot while his partner drives to try to cut him off. Now, why in the world would an older Paul Newman be the one to go on foot chasing after this guy instead of his younger, more athletic partner? I don't know, I guess they just thought it'd be better if the main star of the movie was the one that went on the foot chase. Anyway, the person actually gets away. Corelli and an out-of-breath Murphy are joined by 2 other cops from their precinct. They suggest that next time Murphy just take the guy out instead of running and chasing after him, and that they'd back up his story. Murphy isn't interested in this. Captain Connolly, played by Ed Asner, arrives at the 41st Precinct. We see that the front of the precinct is like a playground for an elementary school. Kids are playing and elderly people are sitting in front watching them. Connolly enters the precinct and heads it out with the soon-to-be former captain as he blames him for the deaths of the 2 patrolmen and for letting the precinct become one of the most corrupt in the city. The former captain blames the neighborhood and the politicians and claims that he did the best he could, and he's going to retire and not think about this place anymore. Murphy and Corelli see a pimp in Charlotte arguing. She's the same prostitute that murdered the 2 cops earlier. Corelli goes to check in on Charlotte's injuries while Murphy deals with the pimp. The pimp informs him that Charlotte used to be his #1 hoe, but now she isn't worth anything and that she's high on angel dust. Murphy tells him to keep it off the streets. He doesn't want to see them working on his streets. The pimp then offers Murphy a bribe so that he won't force them to leave. Murphy takes offense to this and he walks over to the pimp's car and starts to break the pimp's headlights and rips off his windshield wipers. And he tells him to get off his corner, not to be on his streets anymore, and he can't bribe him. They then get a call about a crazed man that looks like Simon Pegg brandishing a knife and swinging at a crowd of people. Murphy and Corelli get to the scene, and Murphy decides to distract the crazed maniac by acting like a... Captain Connolly takes a tour with a few of the sergeants around the station and is telling them that they have to remove the Native American decorations that are hanging up in the station and to get rid of all the kids and the people that are sitting in front of the building. The sergeants tell them that that's not a good idea, that the people in the neighborhood sit and bring their kids to play in front of the station because it's the safest place in the neighborhood. The neighborhood is like a war zone and the station is like a Fort Apache, a police station in hostile territory. Murphy and Corelli return to the hospital to drop off the crazed man, and now it seems like that every time there's a problem, instead of arresting people, Murphy just brings them to the hospital. Now, I don't understand this. I don't think this is going to make the situation in the neighborhood any better by not arresting these people that should actually be put in jail, but hey, what do I know? Anyway, he flirts with Isabella and asks her out on a date. She says she gets asked out by 200 cops a week. Why should she say yes to him? And Murphy responds with, because you say yes to them all the time. I guess that makes you the only cop I'm going to say no to. Back at the station, Captain Connolly is getting briefed on an abandoned store that is running a drug operation that they traced to the hospital Isabella works at. It appears that drug dealers are getting their drugs from the hospital and selling them inside the hospital. They say narcotics has an undercover officer inside. Connolly thinks that this may be linked to the 2 officers that were killed earlier, but they shoot that down. He asks if there is any witnesses or if anyone reported seeing anything, and he's told basically that snitches get stitches. No one's gonna talk to cops, especially nobody in the Bronx. We go back to Murphy and Corelli as they drive by a drugged out Charlotte walking down the streets half naked in the pouring rain. They're responding to a call about a sick girl in her apartment. Murphy and Corelli enter the apartment and see that it's occupied by a bunch of Mexicans that might be illegal. They can't communicate with them, but they all tell them to go to the bedroom. So Murphy and Corelli walk into the bedroom and they see a young 14-year-old girl there breathing heavy and sweating like crazy. She's covering herself, and Murphy deduces that she's going into labor and that she's been hiding the fact that she's been pregnant this entire time from her family. But now there's no more hiding it. You're gonna have to give birth to this baby now, and they're gonna help. And they deliver the baby in the bedroom. Back at the hospital, Go-Go from Short Eyes is seen walking down the halls ready to meet some customers in the stairwell. He walks around like Benny Blanco from the Bronx.
Hey, remember me?
Murphy and his partner walk in and see Isabella again. She asks what's wrong with Murphy as he looks tired and disheveled as he's sitting in a wheelchair, and Corelli informs her that he just delivered a baby. She asks him if he was nervous, and he says no. He says that no, that's the 14th pregnancy he's delivered in his 17 years being a police officer in the Bronx. She then asks him out on a date, and then they run this little cute little routine back from before, but this time it's vice versa, where after she asks him, he's like, I get asked by 200 nurses every day. Why should I say yes to you? Same little thing. It was cute. Later that night, Corelli goes to visit his fiancée to try to coerce her into putting out before the wedding night, and Murphy takes out Isabella, and we discover that they know a lot about each other without needing to get to really talk about themselves to each other. Murphy does inform her that he was married before, but is divorced and has a few kids. Later on their way home, Isabella asks why he's still a patrolman, and we hear a story about how he had it in with the drug dealer when he was a detective, and they went back and forth, and one day he decided to take the guy's car keys and throw it in the sewer and then eat the guy's license and registration. The guy went crazy and called his lawyer and basically got Murphy demoted back to a patrolman. He goes to drop off Isabella at her house, and she wonders why he hasn't made a move. He says something slick and goes in for the kiss. Then she asks him to take her to his house. We then see that Corelli got what he wanted from his fiancée. Murphy takes Isabella back to his apartment and they bone. After Murphy lays down some good pipe, Isabella's passed out on his bed, and he looks like he might be serious about this woman, like he might be actually in love. He gets up to go to the bathroom when he notices something on her leg. Track marks. She's a user. Murphy isn't sure how to handle this because he really likes her, and he's upset. We then see an old man trying to fix a flat tire when Charlotte approaches him and tells him that she thinks he's cute and wants to give him some love for free. She really likes him, and she's really in the mood for some loving. This is when you don't fall for the bait. This situation never ends well for anyone, but the old man isn't thinking with his head, he's thinking with his other head, and wanders off with Charlotte into an abandoned building. She tells him to take a seat on this disgusting sofa, and he does. As she gets down in front of him like she's about to do something, she gives him a kiss, and then all of a sudden, she pulls out of her mouth a razor blade and slices the guy's throat. Now, this was very, very sick, and I love it. I love the way she did it, and I mean sick, not like disgusting or disturbing, although it was kind of eerie how everything was leading up to this moment, like because we know that she's a bad person, but this guy doesn't know, and we know he's an idiot for doing this, and she just goes crazy, but calmly crazy, and just slices his throat for no reason, and it looks like she ends up like going in for his neck even more after with this blade. It's kind of really, really disturbing. So I loved it. I thought it was pretty gruesome and pretty cool. Captain Donnelly wants the men to make a lot of felony collars, so they're going undercover. He wants them to make cases, crack skulls, and try to get info on who killed the two rookies. We then see Daniello drop his baton. I'm assuming they're trying to imply that he might be a junkie himself, high on heroin or something, but they never bring it up again. Anyway, Connolly wants arrests. If they collar someone who gives them information that leads to the arrest of the person responsible for the murder of the two police officers, that they'll get 2-week paid vacation. They go to a snitch's house that they know about, they kick in the door with no warrant and scare the guy into snitching on somebody else in the building who has been selling guns. Since Murphy and Corelli do not have a warrant, they decide that the best bet is to set a fire in the hallway to lure the guy out. Anyway, they lure the guy out, and I'm assuming he gives them some info because then we see Corelli and Murphy breaking up a cockfighting ring in the basement of some building somewhere. We then see that Murphy and Corelli have a van full of people arrested inside. They're driving down the street when Murphy gets out with a bullhorn where all the pros and johns are, and he starts yelling at them that they're all under arrest. They say, "Are you serious?" They don't believe it because they always allowed this to happen with, just being private where they can't see anything. And he goes, "Yep, times are changing. Everybody's under arrest, and it's line up in the corner." We then see Charlotte walk by. She notices this is happening, and she sneaks away without them noticing her. Corelli then commandeers a MTA bus and herds back a busload of people into the precinct. We then see that Murphy is upset about this whole situation. Corelli tells him to cheer up and to not let the new captain bring him down. But Murphy tells him that you can't turn a whole neighborhood upside down, not even for a cop killer. But maybe if you were doing your job in the first place, you wouldn't have the situation where everything was going to hell. I don't know, just my opinion. We then see a community club get raided by the police officers. They start arresting 5 guys from this club, and everybody in the club and everybody in the surrounding buildings starts screaming at the cops saying that this is wrong, that these boys did nothing wrong to warrant them being arrested. The cops don't care. They load them up in the paddy wagon and they drive off. Back in the precinct, it's a madhouse as every single cop in the precinct has arrested a lot of people, but not as many as Murphy and Corelli, and are sending them to the front desk to book them because they want a 2-week paid vacation. Then members of the community where the clubhouse was located are headed to the precinct with bats and chains to demand the release of the 5 boys that were just arrested. The guys from the clubhouse are being interrogated by detectives of the precinct, and they tell them that they didn't kill anybody and that they have 500 witnesses, all girls from Hunter College, where they gave a speech. Outside the station, there's a huge protest happening, and they are throwing things at the officers barricading the station. Murphy is seen chanting along with the protesters outside, "Let the brother go," which pisses off the new captain. The captain walks out and approaches the leader of the community club and asks him to disperse the people because they're interfering with their ongoing police investigation. He tells them if they do not disperse within 5 minutes, he will arrest all of them. They don't leave, and all hell breaks loose when the cops shoot tear gas into the mostly peaceful protesters. The captain calls on Murphy and Corelli to help them. Murphy tells them that he's got no beef with these people and that the captain's just making it worse. Conley tells him that there's a chain of command and he will do what he says. He then forces Corelli and Murphy to arrest the community club leader. We see that Murphy and Isabella's relationship is getting serious as Murphy and Corelli go on a double date. He then introduces Isabella to his kids and they go on several more dates. Murphy looks like a new man and tells Corelli that he's in love. They get a call to assist officers during a fire. They rush to the scene and see that people from the neighborhood are attacking the officers. All hell breaks loose. Murphy and Corelli head to the roof and arrest 2 guys throwing objects onto the police officers, and then they see across the way on another rooftop a couple watching and making out. Murphy makes a joke that it's better than dinner and a movie, as this is their own little movie. All of a sudden, he sees the door open to the roof, and out comes 2 officers. One is Danny Aiello. The couple get up nervous, and the girl hides. The officers didn't see the girl, they just see the guy as he approaches the 2 officers. Aiello believes that this guy is one of the guys that threw an object down that hit his partner in the head, and he starts assaulting the kid. Murphy and Corelli scream for them to stop, that they didn't do anything, but they're too far away and Aiello can't hear him. The man defends himself against Danny Aiello, which leads to Aiello giving him a military press slam off the roof of the building. This is when the film gets really good. Now Murphy has to deal with witnessing a homicide and snitching on his fellow officers. Murphy tells Corelli that basically, in all of his 18 years of being a police officer, today is the first day that he doesn't feel like a cop. Later on the week, Captain Connolly confronts his officers about the death of the young man and says that a complaint has been filed and that there's a witness that claims that an officer from his precinct is the one responsible for the death of the young man. All the officers deny it. The captain says okay, he dismisses everybody but asks Murphy to stay behind. The officers all look like, what's going on? They know they can't really fully trust Murphy because he's not really like totally a cop. He's a cop, but he's not their kind of cop. This also shows me that Captain Connolly knows that Murphy is a good cop, that he'll do things by the book as opposed to the rest of the corrupt scumbags in the precinct. Connolly asks Murphy if he knows anything about this, but Murphy tells him he doesn't. Murphy then leaves his office, and the other officer asks him what happened, but Corelli tells them to leave him alone. Later on in the night, Murphy goes to the local cop bar. The other officers ask him to join them for a drink, and Murphy declines. This makes the other officers, including Danny Aiello specifically, worry. In a crack den somewhere in the Bronx, Gogo and his new sidekick, Jose, go to collect their money when they see a drugged-out Charlotte in the corner. Jose starts to play with Charlotte, so to speak, making her get up and, trying to do something with her. She gets up and starts to dance for him like a snake. She then pulls out the razor and slashes him across the face. Gogo then grabs her, pulls her back, and Jose's so mad that he takes out a knife and he stabs her in the stomach. He kills her right then and there. So I guess the cops are never going to find out who killed the 2 rookies. Anyway, Gogo and Jose end up checking her bag. She has no ID, but she has the gun, so they steal her gun and then decide to wrap her body up and dump her somewhere. We go back to the bar and Danny Aiello is trying to get a sense of what is in Murphy's head. He tells him that Captain Connolly isn't a real cop and that he would sell out his own officers for these people. He says they probably don't even have any witnesses, just making stuff up. And that's when Murphy spills the beans and tells them that they do have an eyewitness. And he rucks out. Aiello's freaked out now. Aiello follows Murphy outside and demands that he tells him what he's talking about. Murphy tells him that they have a witness, the girl that was hiding behind the pile of junk on the roof. Aiello doesn't believe him because he didn't see any girl. And that's what Murphy tells him. Guess what? They also have Corelli as a witness and himself. Like, damn, this guy just ratted out on everyone. Like, if Aiello was a really bad cop, he'd find out where this guy's girlfriend lived and then pay her a visit. And then one day during a situation, instead of backing up Murphy, he'd not back him up and something happens to Murphy and bye-bye, and then he's in the clear. Honestly, confessing this didn't make any sense, but they wanted to do it so this way these two could continue to argue and then get into a fist fight. These two go at it, and Murphy and Aiello are both seriously trying to kill each other. It gets so serious that cops from the precinct have to come to break it up. The next morning, Murphy tells Corelli that he's going to rat on the other two cops and asks them to join him. Corelli says no. He says that ratting on them won't change anything that happened to that kid, and that if he does rat him out, he's got to go on for the rest of his career as a cop with the label snitch or rat on top of it, and nobody would ever really trust him. And remember, what we know from Corelli is that he plans to succeed in life. He dresses for success. He wants to accomplish more than Murphy has. He doesn't want to be a patrolman forever. So by doing this, he's going to limit himself. Or at least that's how he sees it. Murphy's struggling with his thoughts as he awaits Isabella at her house. He then spends his day off with her and then lets her know that he's very serious about this relationship. Later that night, she tries to sneak out of his apartment, and that's when Murphy confronts her about being an addict. They get into an argument, and she tells him that she's not a junkie, she just uses it once in a while like a vacation, and that everyone else in the hospital uses it, even the doctors. He tells her that not everyone sticks needles in their veins. She then tries to make up some stupid excuse, and that's when Murphy tells her to let him get it for her. She looks shocked and surprised that he would even offer this, and he says he would feel safer giving it to her, knowing that it's clean and not laced with anything. He says that they have it in the station to give to informants when they're coming down. This sounds absurd, but they probably do have it in evidence, so they probably do test it so they know what's good and not. So I'm pretty sure he can get it for her. And back in the 80s, I'm pretty sure he could have gotten it for her without any single problem at all. But honestly, I don't know how I feel about Murphy offering this. I understand that he loves her, but this is kind of a complex situation. Isabella declines her offer and asks him to take her home. He then tells her about witnessing the murder. She tells him not to think about it, that the only reason he has a guilty conscience about it is because there are two cops that threw the guy off, and that if it was anyone else, like her brother, the guy would already be in jail. He asks her if that's so wrong, and then she tells him to let her out right then and there. He gives her a kiss goodbye and then asks her if he's going to see her again, and she says, if you want. And then she exits. As she's leaving, we see that Jose and Gogo are watching her exit Murphy's car. They know Murphy's a cop because they've seen him at the hospital. Jose says that she's going to lead him right to them. Gogo says don't worry about it because he's giving her a hot shot, meaning she's going to OD the next time she uses anything she buys from them. There's a knock on the door, and it's Isabella. She's buying from them right now. We then see her the next morning wake up and she's high as hell. Don't know if she went home to use right after she bought it or if she decided to use it early in the daytime, but she's high as hell. But you get a sense that she knows something's wrong, that this is not normal as she exits her apartment, and it feels to me like she's trying to go to the hospital, but she doesn't make it. She collapses. Meanwhile, at the hospital, we see Gogo, and I know that his name is not Gogo in this movie, but he was Gogo in Short Eyes, so he is Gogo from now on. He's selling some drugs to some of his clients at the hospital, and then we discover that these were the undercover cops that they were talking about earlier that they had situated from narcotics in the hospital. They grab Gogo and tell him that he's going to be under arrest, but then realize they have to get his partner, Jose. All of a sudden, the door opens, a doctor walks out, and that's when Gogo gets loose, pulls out his gun, grabs the doctor as a hostage, and tells him to back up. Now, Gogo and Jose have an entire conference room full of hostages. Again, not sure this was the most logical solution to this situation. Murphy and Corelli hear that there's a hostage situation at the hospital and rush over there. They're told there's a back room that is empty where Gogo and Jose have the hostages, and that they may be able to access it from the windows and surprise the criminals. Murphy assists in this little SWAT-like operation, climbing down the side of the building on a harness and smashing through the empty office's windows. Inside, Gogo shoots one of the doctors, and he has some demands. Murphy and the other officer make their way into the room where Gogo and Jose are and take them out. He then starts to look for Isabella but can't find her. We then see a doctor and a nurse in a hallway looking at Isabella's body on a gurney. Murphy enters and he sees her, and they tell him that she OD'd. Murphy tries to pick her up and get her moving again, but the doctor tells her that she's already dead. Murphy breaks down in tears. Murphy's now depressed and mentally just gone. He already had to deal with not feeling like a cop anymore after witnessing a fellow officers murder that kid, but now he just lost the love of his life. A few days go by and Murphy walks into Captain Connolly's office and hands him his badge and tells him that he witnessed the 2 officers throw the kid off the roof and that he will corroborate the girl's story. He tells Connolly that he doesn't want to be a cop anymore. Murphy and Connolly have a good heart-to-heart about what it means to be a cop in the Bronx and that Connolly needs good cops like Murphy at the precinct. Murphy tells him that he's done being a good cop. He's done being a cop in general. Connolly calls for the district attorney to show up and a stenographer, and after they leave, Connolly asks Murphy to hold on to his badge for a little while and think about not quitting. Murphy tells him no thanks and leaves. He then gets in his car and is confronted by Corelli. He confesses to Corelli that he ratted out the other cops, and Corelli says he knows. Murphy tells him that they're going to subpoena him, and Corelli says he's not going to lie for those 2 cops, so he's going to tell them what he saw. He says he doesn't want to leave Murphy holding the bag in the station, and that's when Murphy tells him that he's retired or he put in his papers. Corelli then tries to convince him not to quit, and that's when we see the purse snatcher from earlier on. We see him exiting somebody's window with some goods that he just stole, and Corelli asks Murphy, come on, look, he's right there. You're going to let him go? And Murphy says, yes, I'm a civilian now. But all of a sudden, he starts turning the car. He chases the guy down, and then he starts chasing after him on foot, and our movie ends here. Now, this movie isn't perfect. It actually has a lot of problems. I don't like the way they portrayed Isabella. I think they could have handled her death better where we didn't actually see her. Or I don't even know why she had to use drugs to begin with and why they couldn't have drugged her instead. And the cops never find out who killed the 2 rookies. I mean, eventually they will think that it was Gogo because his gun, the ballistics, will match to that gun that he has on him. So they think he killed her. But in fact, Charlotte was the one that did it. But I do like it in another sense. That just shows what cops go through every day, especially in the 80s in the Bronx. And to say that this didn't happen, yeah, a lot of the stuff are over-exaggerated. And it doesn't happen all the time. But that was the Bronx in 1981. Or 1979. That was what it was. It was that terrible. They were abandoned buildings. They were torn down buildings. They were crack houses. It was horrible. And I kind of like going back and seeing how people lived during that time period. And this would have probably been better as a TV show more than an actual movie. But it's good for the acting. Paul Newman is very good in this film. And his partner Corelli, played by Ken Wall, I think is phenomenal. I'm looking at like, what happened to this guy? Why didn't he do anything else? Anyway, as I said, I do like this film, even though there's a lot I do find wrong with it. I do still think it's a little gem, and I think it's more for the nostalgia factor that seeing New York in 1980s, what it looked like, seeing the neighborhoods, seeing the crack houses, like this is what it really was like. And it really was dangerous in New York at this time period before Giuliani came in and cleaned it up. We had the gangs, we had the mafia, we had crack epidemic. It was horrible. Nonetheless, I like it. I think this would have served better as a television series, but all in all, it's a decent film. If you can find it, check it out. Just remember, as I said, it's a little bit too long, but I'll give this film 3.5 out of 5 stars. If you saw Fort Apache, The Bronx, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about this film. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.